Hello, my name's Beth Calverley. I'm a poet and founder of my own poetry practice, The Poetry Machine. I'm also the poet in residence at University Hospitals Bristol and Western NHS Foundation Trust. The TYAC Professional Education Group got in touch with me and asked me to create a workshop video and a poem in conversation with members of staff working with teenagers and young adults with cancer across the UK. Inspired by those conversations, I've written a poem and also this video, which I'm filming for you today. So the whole idea of today is to help you to dip your toe into writing poetry. Before we begin, make sure you have a pen or just something to write with. And you might also like to get yourself a drink of water or maybe even a tea or coffee. And when you're ready, let's get started. So something that surfaced in my conversations with members of the TYAC Professional Education Group was the need to find the right words on a daily basis, which is something that you're all really good at. So the aim of today's poetry session is going to be to find some words, put them down on paper and just have a play with them. I kind of think of words as the equivalent of an artist's paint box or a sculptor's lump of clay. We just need to find the words and then we can shape them. We're going to start by doing a check-in. So think about if you were going to do a yoga session, you would start by doing a few gentle movements just to see which muscles feel particularly tender today or which muscles might feel good to stretch. And we're going to do the same for our creative muscles. So we'll start by arriving fully in this moment. That means something different for everyone and you'll know what it means for you. It might mean taking 3 deep, relaxing breaths. It might mean rooting your feet on the ground or clearing a bit of space around you on the desk. Whatever it means for you, take some time to arrive in the moment and press play again when you're ready. Okay, so the next part of your check-in with yourself is to tune in with how you're feeling in this moment. So please pick up a pen and think about how you're feeling in this moment if it was a kind of clothing. So for example, you might say that you feel like a bright yellow, warm bobble hat because you're staying cheerful even though it's freezing outside. Or you might say that you feel like a feather boa because you're feeling a little bit fun and relaxed and ready to play. Whatever that might mean for you, draw or write how you're feeling if it was a kind of clothing. When you've chosen what kind of clothing you'd be, just write a few sentences or lines or bullet points about why you've chosen that particular kind of clothing to express how you're feeling in this moment. Okay, so that's the end of our check-in. Before we move on to the next bit, just have a look at your writing and see whether there are any areas which you might need to go a bit gently with today. Any feelings or thoughts that might have come up as a result of that check-in. Right, now let's start the poetry. Before we carry on, I'll just say that every activity that I invite you to do is just an invitation. Feel free to choose your own path through the session and go off on a creative tangent if you wish to do so. If you find yourself going down a path you'd rather not go down right now, simply take your pen off the paper and write about something else. And of course, feel free to pause or stop the video at any point and come back later. The first activity that we're going to do is a word association warm-up. So all you need to do is choose an object to write about. This could be any object at all. Maybe look around the room and draw inspiration from the space around you, or choose somewhere that you know well. So for example, a room in your house or an outdoor space you know well, and think of an object from there. I'm going to choose a mug, because I've got one right beside me. When you've chosen an object, write it in the top left corner of your piece of paper. And then as I've shown, write down lots of other words underneath in a column which relate to the word beforehand. So to give you an example, my starting object was mug, and the next word on it is mismatched, because that's the word that I think of when I think of a mug. The word underneath is the word pear, because that seems to relate to the word before. So the full list, if you're interested, is mug, mismatched, pear, love, kindness, light, window, clouds, and sky. So I'll show you my column again. It's just written down the left-hand side, starting with the object that you chose. Now you're going to do that all over again, starting with a different object. If you like, this could be a slightly different object, maybe one that moves, but it doesn't have to be. To give you an idea, I've chosen the word bees because I've got a lovely tablecloth here which has lots of pictures of bees on it. So yeah, I'll just show you what my second column looks like. You write this one on the other side of the paper. And yeah, just do exactly the same thing, write a word association list. So to give you an idea, my column is bees, honey, makers, art, together, hands, touch, electric, light bulb, glass, and water. Have a go at that, and yeah, come back when you're done. Right, you've got your two lists, now you're ready to make some metaphors. So a metaphor is when you say one thing is another thing to show the links that may not be apparent between them. So what you're going to do is look at your lists and choose one thing from each list to make a metaphor. This works best if you choose words from your columns which are things in the world that you can see or taste or hear or feel or smell, or emotions. Okay, so I'll give you some examples. Kindness is honey. Light is a window. Love is water. So hopefully you get the idea. Have a go yourself and come back when you're done. Right, now you have your metaphor, or maybe you've made a few metaphors. If so, just choose one to work with now. And just spend a few minutes writing down some notes, thoughts, sentences, however it comes out, to explain why that truth is true. Even if it might seem a bit unlikely, it's your job to show the links between those two things, okay? So I'll give you a bit of an example. My metaphor was kindness is honey, and I've written made by busy bees, sweet and wholesome, has healing qualities, moves slowly sometimes and quickly at others, best served warm. Alright, so hopefully you get the idea. Have a go and I'll see you in a moment. Now you're all metaphor pros, you're going to take that with you into this next activity, okay? So the first thing to do is get a new piece of paper and fold it in half like this. All right. When you've done that, you're going to write stuff down the left-hand side of the column. So you're only writing in the left-hand side of the column for this whole next bit until I tell you. And I'm going to take you through it step by step. The first thing you're going to do is write in the top left of your column, I saw, and then say something that you saw. It could be in the last week, it could be today, it could be totally imaginary. For example, I've put, I saw fireworks. All right, so have a go at that. You're writing, I saw, and then something else. The second prompt is I tasted. So write that under your I saw statement. I tasted. I've put I tasted coffee because it's right next to me, but you might choose something totally imaginary like I tasted daydreams. All right? The third prompt, just to let you know, there's 7 prompts in total, so leave enough space for that. So the third prompt is I held or I touched. I've put I held your hand. The fourth prompt is I listened to or I heard. I've put I listened to the Submarine soundtrack, which is amazing. The fifth prompt is I smelled. So I've put I smelled fresh air. The sixth prompt is I decided to. I've put I decided to start my book again. And the last prompt is I didn't. So I put I didn't go to a party. All right, now you should have a series of statements that look like this. So I'll read you my full list. I saw fireworks. I tasted coffee. I held your hand. I listened to the Submarine soundtrack. I smelled fresh air. I decided to start my book again. I didn't go to a party. All right, let's go on to the next bit of this activity. Welcome back. So I'm going to show you something I prepared earlier. You'll see I've written something on both columns. So like before, I'll take you through it step by step. Okay, now we're writing on the right-hand side of the columns. So you're going to add a bit of information to your statements. All right, so a good way of doing this is to use a word like through, as, and, because. So joining words, and anything goes. Okay, so just to say that first, your words are your words, there's no right or wrong. But what I've done is to use those kind of words, and I'll just give you some examples, all right? I saw fireworks through the window. So I've extended my statement about I saw fireworks to say, you know, how I saw them, which was through the window. I tasted coffee, as refreshing as morning. So I've added something to my statement about tasting coffee to show a bit about what it tasted like. I held your hand and squeezed it tight. I listened to the Submarine soundtrack on repeat. I smelled fresh air and it filled me with sky. I decided to start my book again because I had lost the plot. I didn't go to a party and I had a good time anyway. All right, so hopefully you get the idea. You're using sort of connecting words. So like through, as, and, because. Your turn, see you in a moment. Okay, so congratulations, you've now written on both sides of your columns. What you're going to do now is to cut along the line between the two columns to create 2 pieces of paper, so like this. Ooh. Okay. And what you're going to do now is put them next to each other and then move the right-hand column down so it lines up with the one below. you'll find that doing that has created whole new, more poetic statements, some of which may make more sense than others, and that is totally cool. There'll be one at the bottom of your right-hand column which doesn't line up with anything on the left. So what you'll need to do is tear it off or cut it off, like I've done here, and pop it at the top where there's a gap. I'll read you my ones. I saw fireworks and had a good time anyway. I tasted coffee through the window. I held your hand as refreshing as morning. I listened to the submarine soundtrack and squeezed it tight. I smelled fresh air on repeat. I decided to start my book again and it filled me with sky. I didn't go to a party because I had lost the plot. All right, so have a little read of your ones, do the tearing off thing, and then come back in a minute. Reading your lines aloud, you might have found that it forms a poem all in its own right already, which is great. But here are some ideas about how you can play around with them. So you might find you need to move some of the lines around so that they make more sense, they seem to flow more. You might find you need to change some of them around so that they match up with different ones. That's fine too. You might remove some completely, you might add new words. Another idea would be to just choose one of those statements and then write something in response. So start with that line as your starting point, write another line that goes with it in some way, then write another line that goes with that one until you feel you've written enough. So I'll give you an example. I've chosen one of my statements, which is, I held your hand as refreshing as morning. Then I've written another line underneath, there are many hands I want to hold. I'll read you the whole thing. I held your hand as refreshing as morning. There are many hands I want to hold. For now, I am grateful that I have your hand to keep me safe, to help me fall into place. So have a go, just play with it, no right or wrong, and come back when you're done. Before we go, I just want to give a shout out to No Bindings, which is an amazing zine making organisation. They do loads of other stuff as well. And going to one of their zine making clubs was where I first took part in an activity that has helped to inspire the activity that we've just done. So shout out to them. See you in a moment.